Motivation House, yes, that is my channel. Thank you for watching it. You are the one I have been waiting for. And you are right to be on my channel. Look, listen, don't judge from my video, but listen to the motivation that I give to you. Are you confused? Let's just start right now. Prepare your focus, prepare your coffee, and prepare everything that you think is important.
But we both know there's something more to it. When that doubt becomes more than a passing thought, it's worth asking why it's there in the first place. Love can be complicated. It's messy, raw, and vulnerable. But it's not supposed to feel like a constant battle with yourself. There's a difference between working through normal challenges and forcing yourself to fit into something that just doesn't align with who you are. And yet, so many of us cling to relationships that don't feel quite right. Not because we're happy, but because we're afraid of the alternative. Let's get real for a moment. Recognizing the signs that you're dating the wrong person isn't easy. It takes courage to look at your relationship honestly and ask the hard questions. But when you do, you take back your power. You start to value your own peace, your goals, and your ability to grow. And today, we're going to talk about those signs, the ones we often ignore or cover up with excuses. This video will help you gain clarity and confidence in understanding the truth about your relationship. So, let's get into it. Before we begin, please subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss out on more amazing videos like this. Let's get started. You're constantly walking on eggshells. If you're always afraid of saying the wrong thing, it might be time to ask yourself if it's really love or fear. Emotional safety is the foundation of any healthy relationship, and without it, love can quickly feel like a game of survival. You find yourself weighing every word before you speak, second-guessing your tone, or replaying conversations in your mind to figure out where you might have gone wrong. It's exhausting, isn't it? To constantly navigate a minefield that's supposed to feel like home. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever caught yourself tensing up before bringing up an issue? Maybe you wanted to talk about something simple, how their habits affect you, a small miscommunication, or even a boundary you'd like to establish. But your heart races at the thought of how they might react. Will they get defensive? Dismiss your feelings? Turn the conversation around so suddenly you're the one apologizing? This isn't love. It's self-preservation. A healthy relationship doesn't feel like a courtroom where you're pleading your case just to avoid conflict. Let's bring this back to Stoicism for a moment. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Emotional safety begins with understanding that while you can't control your partner's reactions, you can control your response to the situation. If their behavior repeatedly disrupts your peace, it's worth asking why you're allowing that pattern to continue. Always remember that a healthy relationship is one where you feel free to express yourself without fear of judgment, ridicule, or punishment. You should be able to show up as your most authentic self, even in moments of vulnerability. If you're suppressing your voice, your needs, or your boundaries just to keep the peace, what you're really doing is trading your emotional health for temporary stability. And that trade-off isn't sustainable. Let's unpack what this might look like day to day. Maybe you avoid asking for what you need, time, support, or even affection, because it's easier than dealing with their response. Or perhaps you tiptoe around conversations about money, future plans, or past mistakes, because you know those topics will lead to an argument. Over time, you begin to internalize the idea that your feelings don't matter as much as theirs. You learn to avoid conflict at all costs, even if it means betraying your own truth. But the harsh reality is that this isn't love. Love doesn't require you to walk on eggshells. It doesn't demand that you shrink yourself or silence your thoughts just to avoid conflict. Real love holds space for difficult conversations, for disagreements, and even for hurt feelings, because it's built on trust, not fear. So, how do you begin to change this dynamic? First, take an honest look at your relationship. Start by journaling about recurring patterns. Ask yourself, are there certain topics I avoid because they always lead to conflict? Do I feel heard and valued when I express my feelings, or do I feel dismissed? Am I constantly apologizing for things I shouldn't have to apologize for? Writing things down can be incredibly powerful because it helps you see the bigger picture. Patterns that felt random or insignificant start to come into focus. And with clarity, comes the ability to make better decisions. Next, try to practice open communication. This doesn't mean confronting your partner with anger or blame. It means approaching the conversation with curiosity and vulnerability. For example, instead of saying, "You never listen to me," try something like, "I feel like I'm not being heard sometimes, and it's really important to me that we work on this together." Notice how the focus shifts from accusation to collaboration. Of course, communication is a two-way street. If your partner is willing to meet you halfway, there's hope for growth and change. But if they respond with defensiveness, gaslighting, or outright hostility, it's a sign that the relationship may not be as emotionally safe as it needs to be. Remember, your peace of mind is priceless. Stoic philosophy teaches us to prioritize our inner world above all else. No relationship, no matter how much history or potential it holds, is worth sacrificing your emotional well-being. If you find yourself constantly walking on eggshells, it's time to ask a hard question. Are you staying because you're truly happy, or because you're afraid of what might happen if you leave? The choice to address this dynamic, or to walk away if it doesn't improve, requires courage. But here's the good news. Every step you take toward protecting your peace brings you closer to the kind of relationship you truly deserve. One built on trust, respect, and the freedom to be yourself. After all, isn't that the kind of love you're worthy of? Your values and goals don't align. What happens when the person you love sees a completely different future than you do? It's a hard question, isn't it? Love can feel so intoxicating that it tricks us into thinking it's enough to fix anything. But no amount of love can rewrite someone's life script. And if your values and goals are pointing in opposite directions, it's like trying to build a house on two separate blueprints. It just doesn't work. Let's start with what this looks like in real life. Maybe you've always dreamed of traveling the world, spending months exploring new cultures and chasing adventure. But your partner? They want to buy a house in the suburbs, plant roots, and settle into a steady, predictable rhythm. Or perhaps you're fiercely driven in your career, determined to build something big, while they see work as a means to an end and value a simpler, slower pace of life. These aren't just surface-level preferences. They're core pieces of who you are. Now, it's one thing to compromise on the small stuff, what to have for dinner, what show to binge watch. But when it comes to the bigger picture, compromise starts to feel more like a sacrifice. And here's the painful part. If you ignore these mismatches, they don't go away. They fester. Over time, resentment starts creeping in. Not because you don't love each other, but because you're constantly feeling like you have to choose between who you are and who they want you to be. Let's break this down even better. Let's take relationships as a journey. You're both boarding the same train, but if your destinations are completely different, what happens? One of two things. Either one of you abandons your dream and stays on the train for the sake of the other, or you both keep going. But one of you always feels lost, like you're traveling away from the life you wanted. In both scenarios, there's no winning. This isn't to say that people in a relationship need to be carbon copies of each other. You can have different interests, personalities, and approaches to life and still make it work. But when it comes to core values, things like family, career, lifestyle, and your vision for the future, you need to be aligned. Otherwise, you're constantly pulling in opposite directions, wearing yourselves down in the process. Have you ever had a conversation with your partner about what you both want long-term? Not just vague ideas like, "I want to be happy," or "I want to be successful," but specific, concrete goals. Do you see yourselves in the same type of relationship? Do you both want kids? Or is one of you unsure? Are you both willing to make sacrifices for your careers? Or does one of you value stability over ambition? These aren't easy questions, but avoiding them doesn't make the answers any less important. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? And when it comes to relationships, the necessary question is about alignment. Are you and your partner truly moving in the same direction? Or are you staying together simply because it feels easier than having the hard conversations? Alignment doesn't mean perfection. Even the most compatible couples have moments of disagreement. But alignment means that at the core, your values aren't in conflict. It means you both have a shared understanding of what matters most and a willingness to build that future together. So, how do you figure out if you're aligned? Start by having honest conversations, early and often. Don't wait until you're 3 years into the relationship and one of you is envisioning a wedding, while the other is imagining a solo backpacking trip through Southeast Asia. Sit down and talk about the big stuff. Be direct but compassionate. For example, what do you see your life looking like in 5 or 10 years? How do you feel about starting a family someday? What's most important to you? Career, stability, adventure, or something else? Of course, compromise is a part of any relationship, but compromise has its limits. There's a difference between meeting someone halfway and giving up pieces of yourself just to keep the peace. The former strengthens your bond. The latter erodes your sense of self. So, ask yourself, are you and your partner truly building a shared vision for the future? Or are you trying to force your paths to merge when they're naturally diverging? The answer might not come easily, but clarity is always worth the discomfort. And if you realize that your goals don't align, it doesn't mean you've failed. It simply means you're learning to prioritize your own happiness and growth, which is the bravest thing you can do. At the end of the day, love is about partnership. It's about building something together, brick by brick, with shared intentions and mutual respect. If your values and goals align, the journey will feel steady, even when it's challenging. But if you're constantly trying to pull each other in opposite directions, the journey will only leave you both feeling lost, and you deserve so much more than that. The relationship feels one-sided. Love isn't a scorecard, but it's also not supposed to feel like a solo game. If you're constantly the one making plans, reaching out, or bending to keep the peace, you need to ask yourself if you're in a partnership or an emotional tug-of-war. What does a one-sided relationship actually look like? It's subtle at first. Maybe you're the one always texting first, thinking it's just how they are. Or you're the one planning dates, making the sacrifices, or offering support while receiving very little in return. Over time, these small sacrifices add up. It begins to feel like you're putting your heart into something that barely echoes back. Let's take you spend hours planning a special date because you know it'll make them happy. But when it's over, there's no gratitude, no reciprocation, or worse, they don't even notice the effort you put in. Instead of feeling appreciated, you're left questioning if you're asking for too much or if you're just not enough. And that's a wound love should never leave behind. The truth is, relationships thrive on mutual investment. It's not about counting who did what or keeping tabs on favors. It's about showing up for each other in ways that make you feel seen, valued, and cherished. And when the balance is off, when one person is always giving while the other is comfortably taking, it becomes less of a relationship and more of a slow drain on your energy, confidence, and peace. Stoicism offers an incredible lesson here. Epictetus famously taught, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." Think about that for a second. If your relationship feels one-sided, it's worth reflecting. Are you trying to control what's outside your power? Are you chasing affection or validation that should come naturally in a healthy partnership? If the effort to feel valued feels exhausting, maybe it's time to pause and ask yourself, what am I really holding on to? Let's dig deeper into some common scenarios. Have you ever noticed that you're always the one apologizing, even when you weren't at fault? Or maybe you're the one compromising on your dreams, plans, and boundaries to keep the relationship alive.